Do you find that your interest in a plant is greater according to if that plant is hard to find or not?
Of course. Tom, you can't grow it. Right, must grow it.
Okay.
Tom, you're never going to find it in that valley in Peru. You're wasting your time. Get the plane ticket to Peru. Of course, Sonia. Right. And when you do, often you might fail and you accept that, but when you do succeed, then yes. And when you've got it growing here, you absolutely make sure that's the focus. If it's hard to grow, you really got to, tend to it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Someone saying you can't do something, the basic human thing, whatever it is, you really want to try and prove people wrong. Getting hold of a plant that is quite rare in the wild, or if you're allowed to do so, I should add, with the right permissions and everything else. It's quite a buzz when you see it in the wild. Even if you can't collect it because you're not allowed to, taking pictures of things in flower for the first time you've never seen before. Yeah, of course that's the buzz, and there are a few plants that are around here that I managed to get that are hard to get hold of in this country, or are poisonous, or sting you for 9 months when you touch them, such as the deadly stinger, which is over there from Australia.
Is that the one you told us to watch out for the first time?
Yeah, to watch out for.
You said, just watch out for that very casually.
Right next to the path. That's the one. In all these different things, but certainly, a plant that is hard to get hold of, or rumoured to be in a certain forest in Borneo. You've got to go and find it. Even if you're not collecting it, you've got to go and see it. Yes is the answer.
I get that. And it's a weird thing. I think that's like a human trait, I think, as well, isn't it?
Of course it is. Of course it is.
I have to think out loud then, doesn't I?
So that's the idea, I think.
So what this year's favourite, it's that one there. The Gunra Perpensa from Madagascar.
Really?
It's totally hardy.
Yeah.
It's basically a middle-class Gunra, because the Gunra manicata, which is that one behind you, you've got to be really rich and posh to have one of those in the gardens. They're huge. I've also got a tiny little Gunra from Falklands, which I call the working class Gunra, because it's very small, so a poor person can have it in a tiny little garden. But this is a middle-class Gunra, because it only gets about 2 metres tall, 3 metres wide, so your average middle-class person can afford it. Does that sound totally classist?
Yeah, it's exactly what I would expect following our prior conversation. It's actually interesting though for me.
But that survived this winter. I've only been growing it for a year, but they were frozen for 9 days and 9 nights, and I forgot to bring them in, so I thought, they're buggered.
So are they truly hardy? Or
Yeah, they all came back. No, they all came back.
Okay.
They were literally frozen for 9 days and 9 nights, and they vanished. I thought they're dead, and they weren't.
Good. Did you have any others?
What casualties? A plethora.
Well, things I suppose that you thought would die and then didn't.
I had more things I thought wouldn't die and did.
Oh, I see.
Then didn't die and should have done.
Oh,
but it's the weird. It was the lack of frost in November that was the killer.
Oh yeah.
Because it was too mild in November, so plants carried on growing. So the really hardy plants thought, we'll keep growing because we're that hard us, a bit Geordie-ish like. And they then copped it, because it went straight from sort of warm, we've got no clothes on, to freezing cold. Oh my God, we've still got no clothes on, because they couldn't shut up their pores, they couldn't close down their leaves, so they got knackered. Whereas the slightly less hardy plants thought, it's getting cold, it's getting wintry, we'll go to bed, and they got away with it. There's a method to the madness.
Yeah.
And a lot of research trying to work out why so many things died and a few things didn't.
Yeah.
But that Gunra was one of the success stories.
She is like a wealth of knowledge on all things horticultural.
Take this with a pinch of salt.
What kind of plants have you become known for?
Well, that's very strange, because I've never been to New Zealand. But for me, New Zealand plants were the natural progression from Mediterranean. They require mostly, roughly, the same conditions, but they're better adapted to the English climate as opposed to Australian, because they have the same kind of climate where it gets a bit cold in the winter, but not too cold, and the summers are not blisteringly hot. I think New Zealand plants, they're fantastic, because there's such a variety, particularly of foliage and texture and habit. If you want a garden for all seasons, because a lot of them are evergreen, and the foliage is so quirky, so interesting, I think they're fantastic plants, and you can find them here. So I do urge anybody who wants to be adventurous and bold and try something new, go for New Zealand plants, because they will give you years of pleasure and joy.
Because I am self-taught and I I didn't really even understand when I started that obviously you can't grow a cultivar from a seed most of the time. Sometimes you can. And then I just was really interested in a species that I couldn't get hold of. And like I specialise in shrub phlomis. So these were all grown from seed as well, because I got them from someone in Greece, the seed, who collects them all. So there's so many plants in the world that still would be good garden plants, but I suppose a lot of my stock's a bit more wild looking and a bit ragged. I'm not really selling like picture perfect flowering perennials. I'm more interested in adaptable species. That's what interests me. That's what I want to grow and promote, basically.
People often go, Plectranthus, never heard of it. But they're really closely allied to salvia, as you can see from the flower. They're called spur flower because the tongue, on salvia, the tongue sticks forward, but on Plectranthus, it spurs backwards. But not all of them. So some Plectranthus, it does actually stick out forwards like a tongue. But plants like Fruticosa here, this is a pink flowered form of Fruticosa. This has actually been grown in Britain for 150 years. I mean, it's not a new plant in cultivation in Britain. Victorian head gardeners used to use this plant like the canary in the mine. So
this is speaking to me because I'm from a mining village in Durham.
So before the Victorian head gardeners had really reliable thermometers, they'd have a Plectranthus fructicosus out with all their most tender plants.
And that's the first one to go.
And this is the first one. As the temperatures dip below 10 degrees, it takes on a kind of orange hue all over the plant. And it was an indicator to the garden teams to bring in all the most precious tender stuff from their summer holidays out on the terraces around the country houses. So yeah, they kind of used it like a canary in the mine.
Are you the prime carer of the garden? Is the garden kind of your thing?
Yeah.
So what would you describe the garden as?
Developing. It's always developing.
Yeah.
All the roses are scented. And
Are they? So you pick them to scent?
Yeah, I've tried to get perfume. So when Doug's clients come in, I wanted them coming into scent and colour. And then the lavender, they brush past it as they walk through. And there's mint and sage and thyme. So as they walk in, they're already getting those scents and feeling of relaxation.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
It's about getting the right mindset. So Doug's done a master's in the science behind the correlation between mental and physical health. And so he really understands that the way you think affects what you can and can't do. And so he works really hard to get his clients' mindset positive, relaxed. And so he likes them to come into a lovely atmosphere, and they'll come in saying I can't, and they'll go out saying I might.